Hey, this is Kiz, and you're listening to Glowitheflow podcast. I set up a non-profit called Hip Hop Heals. We explore the therapeutic potential of hip hop, and our podcast has been spanning that sort of topic over the continents through USA practice. And in the second season, we started to explore what that looks like in the UK through the stories, lived experience voices of UK MCs and practitioners. So today's guest, what's your name?
My name's Joe Cook.
And you're our Chamber 28 guest on Enter the 36 Chambers. So tell us about what you do.
So I'm a musician. I play drums and percussion. That's my instrument. I write songs. I write lyrics. I play in a couple of bands, and I produce music electronically. And I work with young people.
Thanks so much. How did you come to this work?
I feel like I kind of fell into it in a very nice way. Never envisioned myself being a teacher, but the short answer is I went along to a workshop, and the person that was running the workshop, it was a poetry creative writing workshop, was like, would you be interested in like coming along to some sessions like in schools and stuff, like their own work, and just started shadowing them. And then just through that, met more people, more opportunities came around, volunteered with organisations, and just kind of built things up from there, really.
So what's the most enjoyable thing about your job? What do you enjoy the most?
In a very like selfish way. Like I like creating. I like the creative process, and I like making things, and that's kind of what I do all the time. My job's evolved more over the years, where it's not just teaching someone how to play drums; it's making songs and writing poems and writing raps and recording it. So it's like being a producer for an artist, but my artists are young people, so I'm just kind of always creating. Every day is like a creative day, so that's what I enjoy the most.
Sounds like every day is a great day. How do you know a good therapeutic workshop has happened? What are they indicators?
That's a really good question. For me, one of the main things is when, yeah, I don't want to be like devil's advocate trying to like switch up your question, but it's like when people apply it to outside the workshop. So where a kid might bring in something to my lessons that they've wrote at home, or it's like an idea, or they say, oh, like last night I found this beat and I want to make something like this. So when people are like putting in that creativeness in their own time, like just in the lesson. So like if they're like, I want to write something about, I've just broke up with my girlfriend, and last night I was writing something about it, and I want to keep working on it in the session, or I want to make a beat for it. Like that for me is the best example of it, where people are using it as some form of a coping mechanism, but not in your workshop, like they're doing it off their own back kind of thing.
Yeah, like application of an idea or a technique that you've suggested in a workshop.
Yeah. Or even just, like I was up late last night and I was writing and I want to keep working on it today. Like, you know what I mean? I think that's like, yeah, it's just more like that you feel like you've given them this space to do that, and they're also applying it to their personal space as well. I think that for me, if that answers your question, that's one of the best things when you're like, oh yeah, like you're using this as a tool in your life, not just when you're in the classroom with me. And that's what I really like about it. So yeah.
Thank you so much. What are the things that you have to do to make sure a workshop goes well from a practitioner point of view?
I think there's a lot of variables. Obviously, it depends on like numbers in the workshop and stuff like that. But in just applying it to what I do, I predominantly work with smaller groups unless I'm teaching whole class. It's trying to be flexible as you can. And if you have the opportunity to be as learner, or in my case, as youth led as you can. So kind of being like, because I'm fortunate to work with smaller numbers a lot of the time. So what do you want to do today? And it might be like, oh, I want to work on the beat from last week, or I've got an idea for a song, or I want to write something with a hook. Okay, let's do that. It's a bit more difficult when you're teaching whole class, when you've got like 30 kids, but having a task that has enough, but you feel has enough scope to splinter off into different things. Like, we're looking at, I don't know, repetition. I want you to write a line that repeats, and that's it. You know what I mean? Then you got scope for like someone might repeat the last word, someone might repeat it 8 times, and just that for me, that's a sign. But my big end thing is I always say people should just leave the room better than they came in, or in the same state. Things shouldn't get worse in the workshop. So yeah, I think they should all just leave in a good mood, like having enjoyed themselves. For me, that's kind of the most important thing.
So what are the things that you have to do from your point of view to make that happen?
To make it enjoyable, or to make it flexible, or like
Well, the question I was thinking earlier was, what are the things that you have to do to make sure a workshop goes well from a
yeah,
practitioner point of view? So
yeah,
if people are going to be leaving in a good mood or at
yeah,
least
yeah,
not in a
yeah, yeah,
worse mood, what kind of things do you do to create that
yeah,
scenario?
yeah. That's cool. On a real like kind of simple level, it's planning. Like I really believe in like planning or having a rough idea of what you're gonna do. And I know that kind of contradicts what I said about learner led, but the amount of times you have a kid and they go, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. Just having like something being like, oh well, we could like I often say like we could do this, we could do this, we could do this. Like, what would you like to focus on? And then, oh, I want to focus on a beat. I want to make a drill track. I want to look at sampling or whatever. Okay, we'll do that. So I think having like a plan is really important. I think too many people kind of like go, oh, I'm just going to turn up and see what they say. Yeah, but are you actually going to be able to like get through it then? And the more you do it, the more you can think on your feet. In terms of like the enjoyment, it's a hard one to answer, man. But I think it's a lot of just like, you know, how's it going? How's your day been? What you been up to the weekend? Just like that, like trying to break that formality as well. Because like I work in education environments, so there's often already a barrier and an idea of that relationship, and obviously there has to be some boundaries and guidelines. But trying to like just be friendly, but not a friend, if that makes sense. I
Yeah,
think that's
absolutely.
like the best way because yeah, like it's their space as well as mine, kind of thing. It's my studio, but it's also theirs. It's in their school, so making it feel like that. And I think, you know, like that could be with like lighting, that can be with like chair, you know what I mean? Like making it feel comfortable. But I used to teach in any awful room they gave me, whether it was like a medic room, like a gym or whatever. Like, so I've always had the ability to just make that happen and stuff. But I think having your bag of tricks as well, like if it's really drying up, right, this isn't working, we're going to try this, you know, like always having, and I think that comes with planning. So just always having a plan and being very present and receptive to how they're acting. Like if something's going well, keep going with it. If it's not going so well, maybe we'll just for 5 minutes. Let's just try this, like, you know, or whatever. So yeah. So I guess
Loads of good tips there, Joe. Thank
yeah,
you.
that's all right.
What makes your workshop safe for you to deliver and for participants to take part?
Ooh, I think the work I do in like alternative provision, like so in like in COV they call them extended learning centres, but often they're called pupil referral units. So like kids have been removed from education because we work in smaller numbers. They're like twos, threes at the most. I think I've had 4 at the most in like one session. Um, does that safeness there in terms of there's not like 30 kids like as well, if that makes sense in terms of they can talk about things that they might not talk about in front of certain peers or without judgment and stuff like that. Um, I think that's my main one. Yeah, it's a really hard question to answer, man, because it's. I think the nature of like the art form as well just makes it kind of safe and self-reflective and whatever. Like I don't think it's anything I do as a practitioner, if that makes sense. It's well, there probably is that, but I mean, I can't I can't think of what it
That's
is, and I'm
okay.
trying not to like big myself up in a way. Yeah, I work fully one to one, so there's no staff in the room as well, so that's also like an immediate different vibe as well. Like there's no teacher there, there's no TA, so they might talk to you about things that they wouldn't feel
Yeah.
comfortable talking about, like having, even though, you know, the teachers I work with are sound and they have their best interests at heart, but I understand there's that they're the authority kind of thing, so they might not want to tell
Yeah.
you about some madness that went on over the weekend because then they're worried, blah blah blah. And don't get me wrong, sometimes it happens, and then it turns into a safeguarding thing where you're like, oh mate, because you've told me that, I have to now go and tell, like whatever, like, and it's only because I'm concerned about your welfare. You know what I mean? Like it's not. I'm not trying to snitch on you or anything like that. But yeah, I've just I don't know. Does flexibility equal safety? I don't know, but it's just that kind of like yeah, we're gonna try and learn or be involved in the way that best works for you, kind of thing. Not like sit down and write this. Like if you don't want to write, you know, I can write or whatever. Yeah, that kind of thing. Flexibility.
What external factors could help deliver a good therapeutic hip hop workshop? The systems, the funding,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
people.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, like kind of everything just said. Like you know, funding is obviously like really important because people need to get paid for their time and access to like equipment and stuff like that. Like the cohort, the school I work in, very lucky to like have basically bought a load of studio equipment because they like what I was doing. And I've noticed that the um the level of like creativity, like engagement has like it's really strong. Like now because it's there's more we've got more there and it's not reliant on me lugging things across. So like we have loads of different mics, we have really good monitors, we have a monitor so they're not just huddled over my laptop. Like so there's those kind of things. Not that I wasn't getting the results before, but it just feels better now. It feels a bit more professional. Um so yeah, definitely funding. There was another word you said. What did you say? You said funding. You said another one that maybe
Systems, like people. So the external factors that would help deliver a
yeah.
good
I think
therapeutic work.
people's are like the number one, really. I think you have
Mm,
to like get it or you have to like want to be doing it or you have to have
mm,
people if you're not delivering it who want to see it happen and then trust the facilitators enough to get on with it or can offer that kind of support and feedback and criticism and stuff like that. Like I'm not one of them people that believe like just let me do my thing. Like if people have ideas, I'm all about like absorbing that and stuff. And sometimes they work, sometimes they don't work. And I fully believe in like trying things like you know like oh we'll try having like 10 kids in at once. Okay, that didn't work. We know like moving forward we need smaller numbers is better or whatever. Like you know that kind of stuff. I think funding is the one node. I do believe you can do things on a shoestring budget, but I've kind of had a flavor, like a taste of always like having a bit of funding behind me recently to like release some of them tunes, to make music videos for them, to make lyric videos, and just the output's just better. Like if you know what I mean. And I think for the participants, it's something more. If that makes sense, it's a real
mm.
important not important. It's a big opportunity for them. It's like, yeah, well, I'm getting a video put on YouTube. You're going to put the track on Spotify. What? It got shared. Like, you know, just that kind of thing is important, man. And unfortunately, it costs money. Like, so yeah.
So having the funding enables you to stretch out the impact because you can do things that mean something to the young people.
Yeah, and you can just like I always just think about it as like a musical product. Like I always want their tunes to be like as good as they can be, if that makes sense. So it's like if I can pay someone to mix it, it's gonna sound way better. They're immediately gonna be more happy with it and stuff like that. And like I try and treat it very professionally. Like don't get me wrong, if you can engage a kid and it sounds like a tin can at the end, that's really important. But I don't know. I've just always been like that. I've always wanted it to sound and be as good as it and polished as it can be. And I think it just gives them more pride and ownership. And then the thing about systems is obviously like you know like I'm lucky that I work in places where they're supportive of what I do and they want to get behind it. And like if I ever say to them, like this ain't working or I would like to you know could we approach it this way, they're all ears. I was quite nervous about it when I had some changing of the guard that one of the new guys was a very sport guy. He was from like a rugby background, so I was kind of like he's just not gonna get this kind of thing. Like he would and I'm wrong and I'm completely like admit I was completely wrong and ignorant about that, if you know what I mean. Like so yeah, I think systems is a bit of a loaded word, isn't it? But there is always like some kind of like hierarchy or decision makers in place and stuff like that. So yeah, but then that probably loops around to funding again. Like it's kind of all linked.
Yeah, it does seem when one of these external factors comes into play or doesn't come into play, for me, it seems like there's a domino effect. If you go
Yeah,
somewhere where there's less or more of this, and it seems to be like there's other conditions that might be more.
Yeah, they're always kind of interplay, if you know what I mean. Like, and then
Mm,
it's like, yeah, and I think obviously like another factor is like the people is in us ourselves as the practitioners. Like, I know plenty of people who are like amazing artists, but they're not the best like workshop facilitators or teachers and stuff like that.
yeah.
And then vice versa, I know people that are amazing teachers in the arts, but have never really like pursued it as a career kind of thing. Have never like gigged, you know what I mean? Like so you probably wouldn't say they're the most like skilled in that world, like, but it's just swings and roundabouts for both. I think having a
Mm,
balance of both is important. But yeah,
thank you.
no.
What barriers might stop you from offering a good therapeutic hip hop workshop?
Um, for me, one that's like I've noticed a lot for me, and this is just me, is language barriers. Just like English as a second language. Like I speak a bit of Maltese, but I don't speak any other language. So it's like I struggle with that because I think a lot of what I do is so in schools in whole class is so word orientated that sometimes that can be difficult, like and stuff like that, and maybe that's like a bad thing for me that I need to make my thing more accessible. But that's one thing I've noticed where language barriers, English as a second language, has been difficult. Um, the nature of what I do, there's like sometimes the kids want to talk about things which I don't think is appropriate, and then it's like that line of where do you, because it is censorship. People like to say it's not. It is censorship, but like where do you draw that line as well? Are you infringing on their like creative expression
Can you give
by?
us an example? Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, of course. So obviously, like the nature of like popular music and that, there's a whole drill thing, like UK drill, or wow, drill, UK drill, Brooklyn drill. Brooklyn drill's not as bad, but like in the UK particularly, it's predominantly like it goes like synonymously side by side with gang culture, predominantly talking about violence, talking about criminal activity, provocative statements towards ups, so the other gang, talking about people that have been killed, name dropping people that have been stabbed, name dropping their families and stuff like that. Like, you know, literally like mocking the dead who have died of parts of gang violence. So I have kids that want to write like that. I've got a lad at the moment who I'm working with who I'm noticing is getting worse, if that makes sense. Like he's more and more wanting to talk about that. And when I don't want to backtrack loads, but when I first started, I used to think, well, if they want to talk about that, that's fine, and like kind of like that's just what they want to do. And then the reality for me was I took a lad to a studio and he recorded a song which was very like gang, like gully. I managed to get him to get the swear words out of it, and I thought that was like an achievement. And then I remember playing it back to some of the kids, and I thought, yo, I'm like adding fuel to this fire, this like postcode beef. Like I'm literally like adding to that by this tune and stuff. And that was my moment of being like, nah, man, like I'm not gonna support this kind of thing. And it's
Can
like,
you can you explain that a little bit more, please?
so yeah, so obviously, so pagan is like an enemy, in it. So like because this lad is from a certain postcode talking about certain things, it's aimed at his opposition, another postcode. So I realized all the kids were getting like mad hyped over it, and I was like, yo, I'm just adding to this like
Mm,
bullshit postcode beef, like by like producing this tune and stuff like that. So I like, and also like some conversations with some friends of mine who are facilitators who have struggled with it or managed to really just squash it. I just like them giving me ticks and trips, but on my like, and this is what I say to the lad I'm working with at the moment, who we have a really good relationship though still. But I'm like, yo, in my core, man, I could disagree with it. Like, not even like me as a teacher. I'm saying me as a human being. Like, I'm not having you talking about dead children because that's what it is. Like, you're talking about kids who have been murdered, and you're like mocking it. Like, I was like, I cannot allow that. And I always say, bro, what you do outside is none of my business. If when you're with your boys and you want to write like that, you do it. But in this session, I, that's not going to happen. Kind of thing, and we at the moment we are going through a cycle of we want to live it right, okay, and write some things down. I have a look. You can't say that. man, you can't say that. Oh, I'm like, brother, it's gonna be the same every week. I'm not gonna like shift from this stance, like, you know what I mean? Like, so yeah, so sorry, how was that linked to? It was a barrier thing, wasn't it? It was kind of about
Yeah.
self-expression.
And censorship.
Yeah, censorship, 1,000,000%. Yeah, you know, like I ask them not to swear. Like I swear a lot, so I'm being a hypocrite. But it's also like school, you get me? It's like I've got to play by the rules a little bit, like, and stuff like that. But there's worse things they can be saying. What other barriers? I think socioeconomics plays into most things. I'm a strong believer about that in like class within the arts. You know how people can access stuff. Like, you know, I've got all this gear, but they ain't got nothing at home. So how can they continue to work on it at home and stuff like that? Like things like that. And there are people that have created cool stuff that are working around that. But even that, like, you know, if you're living in a tower block with one laptop between like four of you and your mum's got to work from home and whatever, like, you know, you can't go home and like produce a beat, even though there's more like apps and stuff. So I think socioeconomics is always a bit of a barrier. But that's why I think it's up to people like us to be able to like try and provide something, even if it is for 45 minutes, you know what I mean? Like give them access to stuff. But yeah, I think that's all I can think of really. But language is the main thing I've come across that I'm always trying to get better at, if you know what I mean. I understand my things aren't that inclusive because of that. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Looking back to when you began this work, can you tell us one or two things that would have helped you measure the impact of what your work, the impact of your work better or more easily?
I think when I first started, you were doing it was like doing one-off sessions in schools and stuff. So obviously not having like I didn't really do like long-term projects, if you know what I mean, like 6 weeks, whatever, a year. So that's the main thing, that you just do your thing and then you kind of parachute in and parachute out, and you never know what what you might have done, if that makes sense. Like where obviously if you're working with someone on a week and week out thing, on like a personal level, I was quite like on like a beat making level, I was quite naive to how difficult it is. Like I was a bit like, I'm a drummer, yeah, I can do this. Like, and then just when I actually was like trying to make stuff with kids, it was just not working, and I was like, I need to like really like learn more about music production and stuff, and upskill myself better. I always managed to engage, but I look back and I'm kind of like cringe over some of the, like, you know, stuff we were making or how long it took to do a very simple task that now I can just like smash out, like, you know what I mean? So I guess that'd be resources. I think I didn't think about resources as much, like kind of like what can I bring with me that's going to make this better or quicker or more time efficient and stuff. So I think I was a bit naive to that as well. Like, yeah.
So in that thing about resources, what would help you going back and looking at when you maybe didn't use resources and when you did, or when you use resources ineffectively and when you
Yeah.
did use them effectively? What would help you to evaluate whether it was better for the young people or not?
Yeah,
How do you know if you've done a good job with those resources, for example?
yeah, that's a really
That you
good
wish you
question.
could
I
do
think for me, I'm thinking more about myself, and I shouldn't think about myself. Like for me, one of the main things was like I was a bit um stylistically not hitting the right mark for what they resonate. Like I was a bit ignorant going in, being like, oh yeah, these kids are going to be into hip hop, and it sound. I love hip hop, and then they're like, who's Wu Tang, who's Tribe Called Quest, who's like. So it was like, oh right, okay, that's not the sound you're about. That's not your culture at all. Like, so that was the main thing for me, having to go away and be like, how do I make drill? How do I make what they call UK rap? What are the like aesthetics? But that's me talking on a musical level, if you know what I mean. But that's what I do. I make music with people, so it's good to understand that. The longer I've been doing it, I've had kids get in touch with me after. You can maintain that kind of mentor musical relationship in the future. So we've been doing stuff like I've been doing studio sessions in the holiday when they're not at school, so they can come. And my next idea is I want to have something when my year 11s leave, they can come like after school or in the holidays to still use the studios and stuff like that. So I'm just feeling the relationships are a bit more there, where before, like I said, it was like cut off, cut out. But like now I like, because I've got a work email, I can send them beats. They'll email me on the weekend like, oh Joe, you forgot to send me your thing or whatever, or like, you know what I mean? Like it's that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? It's just
Yeah.
that kind of
So what we're looking at here is what we can spread for other people in our positions across the country, across the globe, to help them to spread their work better and to measure whether it's been working or whether there's something that needs tweaking, or to even to create that window to look through and see how it's gone. So if you're talking about going from one single session to multiple sessions, talking to people after the workshop via email, swapping resources, inviting them to come in after school in the holidays, that sounds to me like relationship building. So I guess the question, if we flip it back to the original stem of the question, which is how would you evaluate that in terms of the young people and what they were benefiting, or how it benefited them? So all of those things mixed together around creating a good relationship, making the space available in the holidays.
Well, to be honest, I think relationship building is the core of it all. Like, if you know what I mean, like I don't think you can do anything without that. Like, especially with the kind of a nature of the young people I work with, they're often like at risk or quite vulnerable and stuff like that. Like, you can't do anything without that. But with your question, I was going to say something then, and my mind's gone off about relationships. But
so how would you know you've made a good relationship with a young person? And going back to when you first started, what are a couple of things that you wish you could do?
I think it would have. I think, I don't know if this is a relationship, but something that I've been slow at doing is like the thing we said about resources. Is like having it where they can access stuff when they're not with you and stuff like that. So like I've created a SoundCloud page, which is just all their beats. So like they can write at home and stuff, like, just things like that, where I never had that at the start, if that makes sense. It was like the world that only existed in my workshop, if that makes sense, like for them. So now that they can, I've got a lad at the moment, he's absolute dynamite MC. Like we're getting an EP together for him, and like he writes quicker than I can like produce. But like I will like send him something or upload it to SoundCloud, and then he'll write it all at home, come in, record it, and then we'll start the next thing and stuff like that. Like, so it's just like those kind of things. Because for me, it is about output. It is about like creating the music and stuff. It's about how good can we make the tunes and stuff. So that, I know I'm not really ticking the box, man. I'm trying to think back to like.
That's all good, Joe. Because what I'm getting from what you've said is that when you create a framework in the lesson that extends to their personal time, so you're setting up resources that they can access in their own time. The SoundCloud page, the writing tools, the beat making production apps. When that has been highlighted in the session for them to continue, you can see after the session what they're doing on their own time. And earlier you said that a tool that you use to know a good therapeutic workshop's happened is that they have carried on in their own time. So it kind of matches up. If
exactly.
Have access, if you have access to what somebody's doing outside, and you can see, the SoundCloud page is filling up with lyrics, or that Google Doc that we shared, it's got another 8 bars written in, and he's done that in his own time, or she's done that in their own time.
No, exactly. And I think it's, that is what it is for me. It's not that
you can review how much they're putting in.
And my lesson ain't just a dust to get out of other lessons. It's that they want to be there, if you know what I mean. Like, I think that's where you spot, even if they're not, this is where I guess you could argue any writing's therapeutic at some point, but like when they're not, they might not be spilling out there, whatever, but if they're doing it in their own time and they're enjoying it and you've sparked that interest in them, I think that's really important. And then like, so I know some of my kids, the young people I teach, are like pursuing artistic careers now, if you know what I mean. And that's awesome to think you sort of started that off for them. Like, the things they make now are way better than what they made with you because they've grown and progressed. But that's amazing. Like, I can literally give you like really quick, I can give you an example where me and my other half were out and walking through Digbuff in Birmingham, and there was that venue, and there was a cipher going on in it. And I was talking to one of the guys who was running the event that I know, and there was this lad looking at me, this like young like black lad, like proper dressed like a roadman and all that, and he kept looking at me. I was looking, and he came up to me and he was like, "You don't remember me, do you?" And I was like looking at him, and then I was like, blah blah. Like, I won't say his name, like and he was like, "Yeah," and I was like, "Oh my god!" And I was like, "Brother," I was like, "You look so much older now. Like, you got a mustache and all that." I was like, "What you doing here, man? What you doing here?" And he's like, "Oh, I make like drill," and I was like, "Oh no, you don't, do you? What kind of drill?" And he's like, "No, it's all like melodic drill, like talking about him, whatever." And I was like, "Oh, that's sick, man." He's like, "So what you doing here?" He's like, "Oh, I'm getting on the cipher, just trying to get out there." And he was like, "You started that for me, you know." He's like, "You were the one that like started that when we were in the studio in Handsworth," and I was a bit like, because he was quite a handful as well in the sessions, but we just had a good relationship, like, and that, like, I mean, I don't know why we just did, and that was like, oh yeah, that's why I do it, you know what I mean, like that's why I do it, like even if I'd never seen him again, it's, he's obviously off there doing his thing, and I was a little catalyst or just a little thing along the way to enable him to do that. So yeah, I've had it like when I was in town, and I seen a lad I used to teach with loads of kids, like proper like goons, man, like proper kids, like look like they would probably rob me for my Pokemon cards when I was a kid or something like that. And they'll come over and they're like, "Come meet the guys, man, come meet the guys." And I was like, "Oh man," they probably think I'm an undercover cop or something. And they were like, I won't tell you what he called me, but he was like, "This is my," like whatever. And I was like, "Whoa, this is weird." But there's like all these young black lads like fist bumping me and whatever, because it's like he said, "This guy's my guy," kind of thing. Like, and it's like, so that's a nice feeling when they're not embarrassed out in public, if you know what I mean.
It's like your teenager.
Oh god, there's my music teacher, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. That's sick.
So yeah.
So we're just heading into the last couple of questions now.
Yeah.
So these ones are going to be a bit briefer. What guidance do you wish you had before starting to help improve your evaluation skills? So that's specifically, if you were going to go back into time and say to your younger Joe self when you first started out, and you might not have had loads of different tips and tricks for how to evaluate the impact of what you're doing. What are the things, the tips, the little golden nuggets?
Predominantly for evaluation, that one. Predominantly for evaluation, rather than delivery.
Yeah. What would help improve your evaluation skills?
I think the main thing was like I didn't really evaluate, if that makes sense. It was like obviously like you have that thing of like you want it to go well. I don't have that attitude of being like, well, I still got paid, I don't care if they weren't engaged. Like, you know what I mean? It would bother me if I was like, man, that was difficult. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what could I have done better? So I guess like having a reflective practice, and like my kind of form of that mainly comes in like emailing someone from the crew or my line manager, like about the session. Just if you had a particularly good session, if you know what I mean. Just emailing, like communicating with someone about it. I never really did that. You know what I mean? It's just kind of in your own head. So I think having like people you can feedback with is really important. Like so that would be the main one.
Like unpacking space, time to debrief.
Yeah, exactly that. Like I never thought I would be that guy, but I'm like strongly believe in like a debrief, and like I manage like, what is it, like 9 people on some like creative music projects where I'm adamant people have to stay for a debrief after. Like, even if you got to go, you've got to let me know in advance, because I expect to be like, how was your session? How was your session? What are we doing next week? Kind of thing. Like, so that's something that has developed in me. Like, usually, you're knackered. Oh man, I just want to get out of here now. I need to get my train or whatever. Like, you know what I mean? So yeah, that, and I think just again, I don't know if it's evaluation, but having more tools in your box, if you know what I mean. I've always been lucky that I've managed to just naturally, oh, this ain't working, we'll switch it up. But rather than that flogging a dead horse kind of thing, I think I wish someone had told me that earlier, rather than some of the people I worked with did have a workshop and they stuck to that workshop, if that makes sense. So it's like, I thought, oh, that's how you facilitate, if you know what I mean, where I'm not saying what they do is wrong, but it's just not my way of delivering and stuff. Like,
so to feed that back to you, it sounds like you're saying that having enough of a plan to break away from the plan and evaluating it in the moment, oh, this isn't falling as I expected in the workshop, or this isn't sitting right, or maybe that didn't go as well with the people, that's not been as enjoyable, or that didn't set up this next part. of the session, I need to tweak in the moment so that you've got that.
Yeah, and like it still
constant-
happens all the time for me. Like it's that thing of like that didn't go down as well, so I'm not gonna keep pushing it with that young like nah, man, you will enjoy this at some point because I think it's sick, if you know what I mean. Like it's yeah, that
That's
kind
key.
of attitude. But I think that was just that kind of links more towards experience and facilitation skills, because it's like not having I didn't have those other things to pull from, if you know what I mean. Like so yeah.
Time builds up
Yeah,
things that you can twist in
Yeah.
and twist out of when you're doing
Exactly.
an activity
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, last question, really simple. Imagine you're writing a job description for a therapeutic hip hop facilitator. What would a job description look like? So, what would be 5 qualities that you think somebody doing this work needs to have?
And what was it? What was the job for? Sorry, it was a hip hop.
General therapeutic hip hop practice in this workshop facilitation vibe. And if you can hear that cat in the background,
I can't
scraping the door, she wants to come
in. So I think for therapy hip hop, I think you gotta be like into hip hop.
Yeah, into hip hop.
Like
Number 2.
So I guess then it's having a skill in any of those elements, if you know what I mean. So whether that's you can write lyrics, you can produce music, you can graffiti, you can break dance, you can whatever. So actually being upskilled.
Yeah.
I think you gotta be creative. You gotta be creative.
Number 4.
You gotta be empathetic.
Empathy. Number 5.
Number 5. I think for what I do, you gotta be a bit resilient. You gotta have like, because sometimes things are difficult. You know what I mean? Like not through anything you're doing, but some of the young people you want are going through madness, and that's gonna bleed out into the session. So like sometimes being able to, take the brakes off a bit. Like like we're planning to get this bass line done, but I can tell something's up with you today, so we'll relax a bit today. Do you want to put a tune on? How's your week? Just having a bit more of like a youth worker kind of head on, if that makes sense, rather than no, this is a music lesson. We're going to continue to make music. You know what I mean? Like there, so
put the person's well-being at the forefront of the process of making the.
Yeah. Like so, being I guess that would be like empathetic. Well, we said empathetic, but I think it needs to be thick-skinned because things can go wrong, but more like receptive, if that makes sense. Not just like, well, I want to make this. This is what I make. I make 90s boom bap, so that's all we're gonna make. Oh, I want to make Afrobeat. Nah, bruv, 90s boom bap's the one. Like, do you know what I mean? Like it's that kind of thing. Like, yeah.
So that's like 6. So the end was like resilient and receptive, and that
that is kind of
thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
If they've got things to lay out things that they're carrying, maybe emotional things that they need to lay down.
Just be like emotionally aware, not just like, oh, we're going to ignore this and we're just going to carry on hitting the drum machine. Like, just be like, is everything all right?
Also,
like,
you were also saying a bit earlier that it's important to have a musical quality product, but then here also it's important to know when to put the brakes on and just create space for somebody to listen to some music and enjoy themselves. So what it sounds like is that to be a good practitioner, you need to be able to have that flow and attunement to somebody to know when to pull back.
I always say because I'm a creative, that's what I do. And you do just have bad days at the office, or you have days where it's just not, it's not coming. Like you sit down to write and you just haven't really got any ideas, or your mind's elsewhere. You're stressing about something, that's gonna happen with your participants as well. Like, you know what I mean? And it's not a reflective on your, like I had a lad who was like, like sleeping in a car. So it's like, you tell me if he's going to be up for like, coming in and doing whatever. He might just want to just chill and just put some music on, and that's all right. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so yeah. As long as you're not doing it every session, I think sometimes that's when it becomes an issue. You know what I mean? Like you kind of, we are there to engage young people in creative activities. You know what I mean? If it just becomes a hangout, anyone can hit YouTube. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So keeping the goal in mind.
Yeah, fully.
Okay, thanks so much, Joe. It's been amazing to hear your inner depths of working. Every time we talk, I learn a lot, and it's been great to be able to put some of your wisdom into this research project. So this podcast is part of the Cumin Network's bursary, and I've been asked to explore an area of therapeutic hip hop. So we'll be publishing some results and thinking about a piece of podcast recording as actually like a research tool. So this is part of that process where talking to rappers and hip hop heads and music makers to explore what makes a good workshop, a good therapeutic workshop, and what's the difference between that and a straight arts-based workshop.
Of course, yeah, of course.
So thank you for involving yourself and being always up for joining us in these things. And have a wicked bank holiday weekend.
Cheers. Thanks for having me.
See you later, dude.
Ciao.